The son of Krithos was a molten orange ball hanging low in the sky, casting jagged shadows over the arena. It was not a natural arena. It had been carved into the volcanic mountains long ago, a massive circle of black stone and molten rivers, rimmed with spiked towers and observation platforms. Thousands of eyes watched from every level, aliens of all shapes, sizes, and colors. Some were tall and insect-like, their multi-jointed legs clattering across metal walkways. Others were sleek and serpent-like, their glowing eyes reflecting the fires below. And at the center of it all, atop a raised platform of obsidian, waited Valera. She was called the Dragon Woman, and she was as feared as the legendary beast she commanded. Valera's hair shimmered like molten metal, falling to her waist in silver threads. Her eyes glowed faintly with an inner light, reflecting the heat of the arena below. Her armor was not ordinary. It was forged from the same alloys that made Oblivion, the metallic dragon beside her. The creature towered over even the largest aliens, its wings folded like great steel sails, its body a combination of gleaming metal plates, glowing veins of energy, and articulated joints that hissed with hydraulic power. Its eyes were twin red orbs that seemed to see everything, calculating and cold. "Another 100 warriors have failed," Valera said softly, her voice clear across the arena through the sound amplifiers built into the towers. "Another 106, if we count the ones who didn't even survive the first attempt." Each had been brilliant, armed with weapons, shields, or telekinetic abilities far beyond anything Earth had ever seen, and each had failed spectacularly. Some were crushed beneath Oblivion's claws, their bodies flattened like metal sheets. Others were fried by the dragon's plasma breath. A few had managed to reach the beast's back, only to be thrown off in the final challenge, never to rise again. And yet here came a human. Joran Hale walked into the arena, his boots clanking softly against the stone floor. He wore a simple combat suit, stripped of most heavy armor, relying instead on mobility and instinct. A small energy belt, a magnetic tether, and a few minimal tools were strapped to his body. No alien technology, no massive weapons, no psionic amplifiers, just him. The crowd laughed. Some of the aliens shook their heads. A human against Oblivion, against Valera. Even in the most advanced galactic empires, humans were considered weak, unpredictable, fragile, barely able to survive in space without assistance. But Joran did not flinch. His dark eyes scanned the metallic dragon, studying every twitch of its claws, every shiver of its wings. He observed the slight hum of energy running through its veins, the way its head tilted slightly as if listening for something only it could hear. Unlike the others, he did not charge. He did not draw a weapon. He simply watched. Valera raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Interesting," she murmured. "The human does not rush. Perhaps he is different." A wave of heat rolled out from the lava rivers as the sun's light reflected off the molten rock. Joran took a careful step forward, his eyes never leaving Oblivion. The dragon shifted slightly, its massive claws scraping against the stone, sparks flying. The first attack came faster than expected. Oblivion's head shot forward like a cannon, jaws snapping. The humans and aliens before Joran would have been crushed instantly. But Joran sidestepped with precision, feeling the wind from the metallic teeth close past him. His boots dug into the stone, steadying him. He dropped to one knee, studying the dragon's patterns, noticing the rhythm of its movement. It wasn't just brute force, it was strategy. Oblivion calculated, anticipated, tested its prey. And Joran could see it. Hours passed in silence. While other warriors had rushed, trying to force the dragon into submission, Joran moved slowly, matching his steps with Oblivion's, learning when to dodge, when to approach, when to pause. He noticed the dragon's smallest signals, a flick of its tail, a faint hiss, the direction of its glowing eyes. Each movement was a message, a test, a rhythm. Finally, he reached the first milestone, the outer ring of the arena. The dragon's eyes glowed brighter and the crowd hushed. Valera leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees. "It is alive in ways none of them imagined," she whispered. "Perhaps the human might survive longer than expected." They had tried to overpower Oblivion, to use weapons or magic to break it into submission. But Joran had no such intentions. He crouched low, hands empty, and approached the dragon with calm, careful movements. Oblivion's head tilted, its sensors flickering as if trying to understand this strange creature who dared to move without fear. Suddenly, the dragon struck. Its massive tail whipped toward him, metal spikes slicing through the air. Joran rolled, narrowly avoiding the attack, feeling the heat ripple over his back. He had not expected to be perfect, none could be, but he had learned enough to survive. He pulled the magnetic tether from his belt, attaching one end to the arena floor, using it to vault over Oblivion's next attack. Sparks flew, the tether sizzling against the metal plates. The crowd gasped. Aliens whispered, uncertain. Humans had always been clever, but this was audacity. Valera's lips curved slightly. She had faced many species, and none had adapted like this. He studies it, he listens. Fascinating, she murmured. Joran paused, kneeling just out of reach of Oblivion's claws. He extended his hand, not in attack, but as if offering trust. The dragon's red eyes narrowed, curious. It had never met a warrior who did not immediately strike. The tail whipped again, faster this time, a blur of metal and energy. Joran dove to the side, letting the momentum carry him around the dragon. He landed lightly, facing the beast, and slowly raised his eyes to meet its gaze. For a long moment, nothing happened. Oblivion hissed, sparks dancing along its metal jaw, then retreated slightly. Joran felt a thrill, not fear, not arrogance, but understanding. He could see the rhythm, the intelligence, the mind inside this metallic beast. And for the first time, he realized something important. He did not need to fight Oblivion. He needed to communicate. Hours turned into days in the arena. The sun of Krythos dipped low and rose again. Joran survived every test Oblivion threw at him. Fire blasts from the dragon's mouth singed the stone around him. Plasma claws tore up the arena floor. And still, he adapted. Each time he learned something new, how Oblivion's wings shifted the air, how the hydraulic muscles worked, how its heat sensors detected movement. Other warriors would have panicked, overwhelmed by the power. Joran moved with a calm born of experience and confidence. He was not stronger than the dragon, but he was clever, patient, and brave, qualities no other warrior had relied upon. Valera watched from her platform, fascinated. She had expected the human to be just another failure, a brief amusement for the crowd. But he was different. There was no arrogance, no fear, no desperation, only focus, only determination. And she realized a spark of human audacity, the kind that had conquered planets and outwitted machines far more powerful than themselves. By the time the sun set over Krythos, casting deep orange and red shadows across the arena, Joran had achieved something no other warrior had. Oblivion no longer lunged with deadly force. It watched him, curious, cautious, but not attacking. The dragon's glowing red eyes followed him like a partner in a silent dance, testing, judging, but not striking. Valera leaned back, her hands folded over her chest. Perhaps, she murmured, the human has a chance. But for now he had survived, and survival on Krythos was the first step toward triumph. The audience remained silent. No cheers, no mockery, they sensed it. Something had changed. A human, against all odds, had not only survived Oblivion's attacks, but had begun to communicate in a way no one else could. Joran looked up at the massive metallic dragon, his heart steady. He understood that brute strength alone would not win this challenge. Patience, observation, and courage would. And for the first time he dared to believe he might be the one to tame the untamable. Valera's voice carried across the arena, soft but sharp. If you are truly a warrior human, prove it. Survive the night. Learn the dragon. And then, perhaps you will live to see the day you ride Oblivion. A human who might not just survive, but who might win. The night over Krythos was dark, but the volcanic arena glowed with molten light. Lava rivers reflected flickers of red and orange, casting eerie shadows across the jagged stones. The audience had left for the night, but Valera remained on her platform, silent and watchful. Oblivion crouched in the center, wings folded, its glowing red eyes tracking every movement, even in the dim light. The metallic dragon made no sound except the occasional hiss of heated metal and the soft whir of hydraulics. Joran Hale moved carefully, feeling the heat radiating from the ground beneath him. He did not rest, not yet. Every movement of Oblivion was a lesson. Every vibration, every hiss, every flicker of light across its metal plates told him something about its mood, its power, its intelligence. Most warriors would have taken a break, exhausted after the first day's attacks. But humans had a strange ability, the ability to endure, to observe, to adapt when others relied on sheer power. Joran circled the dragon slowly, keeping low, watching the muscles under the metal plates shift, the heat waves rising from its body. He noticed patterns in the way it shifted its weight, how it flexed its tail, the timing between its hissing breaths. It was like reading a rhythm, a heartbeat, a language that had no words. And Joran understood instinctively that Oblivion was testing him, learning him as much as he was learning it. Elsewhere in the galaxy, the 96 warriors who had attempted this challenge had all failed spectacularly. Some had used raw strength, straining against Oblivion's massive claws and armored body, only to be crushed. Others had tried advanced alien technologies, energy whips, telekinetic restraints, neural disruptors, but Oblivion adapted faster than any machine could keep up. Some had reached the Dragon's back, riding briefly only to be flung off like toys. Stories of their failures had traveled across systems, warning would-be challengers of the Dragon's power. Joran knew all of this, and he ignored it. He did not come here to repeat the mistakes of others. He came to observe, to understand, and to survive. The first hours of the night passed quietly, almost peacefully. Joran did not attack. He did not provoke Oblivion. He moved slowly, testing the dragon's reactions, extending a hand as a gesture of trust, letting the dragon move around him, sensing the way it shifted its massive weight. Oblivion hissed and flexed, curious but cautious. The human's calm aura seemed to confuse it. Most warriors had entered the arena with fear, rage, or overconfidence. Joran had neither. Valera leaned over the edge of her platform, watching him carefully. "He is unlike any human I have seen," she murmured. "He does not fight with weapons, does not rely on magic or machines. He fights with patience, with observation, with courage. Perhaps he is clever enough to survive." Most warriors would have panicked, frozen, or struck blindly. But Joran reacted instantly, using a small magnetic tether to swing himself out of reach. He landed lightly on the other side, his eyes still fixed on Oblivion. The dragon paused, tilting its head as if assessing the human's unusual movements. Joran breathed slowly, calmly, noticing the subtle changes in the dragon's sensors, the faint vibrations that indicated it was calculating the next strike. Hours turned into the first cycle of the Krythos night. Joran tested small movements, creeping closer, observing. He mimicked some of the dragon's gestures, the slight arch of its back, the flick of its tail, the tilt of its head. It was not domination, it was communication. As he studied Oblivion, memories of the previous warrior's failures came to him. He had seen footage, watched their strategies, and studied their mistakes. One alien had tried to trap Oblivion with a net of energy cables. It had barely scratched the dragon before it tore the cables apart and crushed the warrior. Another had tried to bind it with magnetic shackles. It had only angered the dragon, sending the alien flying into a lava river. Every failure had one thing in common. The warriors tried to impose control rather than understand. Joran's human mind worked differently. He noticed the little gaps in the dragon's armor where hydraulic joints were exposed. He noticed the patterns in its breathing, the timing of its tail strikes, the way it shifted weight before a lunge. These were small openings, not for attack but for observation. He began to move in sync with the dragon, almost like a dance. The more he moved with it, the less it attacked. Valera's curiosity grew. She had witnessed many warriors attempt the challenge, but none had shown this kind of patience, this kind of subtle strategy. "Perhaps humans are not as fragile as the galaxy believes," she whispered. "Perhaps they are unpredictable enough to survive." Sparks flew as molten heat from nearby lava rivers rose, distorting the air. Joran had to anticipate each movement, each breath, each strike. One misstep could mean death, and yet he moved carefully, reacting to the rhythm he had learned, predicting the dragon's next motion before it even happened. Hours passed. Joran was exhausted, but he did not stop. Humans had an ability that other species often underestimated: endurance. He could keep going when others would collapse, could adapt when others would panic. His movements became smoother, more in tune with Oblivion's, and the dragon responded slowly, cautiously, almost as if it were testing him. By the middle of the night, the first major breakthrough occurred. Oblivion shifted its massive head, bringing its eyes level with Joran. The human froze, holding his ground. There was no fear in him, only attention, only focus. The dragon hissed softly, the metal of its jaw flexing, and for the first time it did not attack. Valera gasped quietly. It is listening," she said. "The dragon is listening to him." Oblivion's head followed, tilting slightly. The air crackled with energy, molten heat, and tension. The human extended his hand slowly, a gesture of trust rather than dominance. Oblivion hesitated. Then, almost imperceptibly, it leaned slightly toward him. The human's heart raced, but his face remained calm. He knew this was only the beginning. The real challenge was far from over. Oblivion would test him harder, faster, more violently than any warrior before. But for now, a bond had begun to form, fragile and tentative, but real. From her platform, Valera watched in fascination. "He understands what none of them did," she murmured. "It is not strength that matters, it is understanding." Perhaps the human is the first to see the dragon as more than a machine, more than a weapon. Perhaps he sees it as a being. The pattern of failure that had doomed 96 warriors did not claim him. By the end of the Krythos night, Joran had achieved something remarkable. Oblivion no longer lunged to kill. It circled him slowly, studied him with glowing eyes, and moved in ways that suggested recognition rather than aggression. For the first time, the dragon seemed to accept that this human was different, capable, and perhaps worthy. Valera's voice echoed across the arena, calm but tinged with wonder. "Perhaps the human has a chance," she said softly. "Perhaps the impossible is no longer impossible." As the first light of Krythos, twin moons, touched the arena, Oblivion settled beside him, massive body coiled, wings folded, glowing eyes fixed on the human. A spark of understanding passed between them, a silent recognition of courage, patience, and intelligence. The night over Krythos ended, but the challenge had only begun. Joran knew the next tests would be more difficult. Valera would push him, the dragon would push him, and perhaps the galaxy would push him. But one truth was clear: humans could endure, humans could adapt, and humans could rise where others failed. For the first time, the arena felt different, not like a place of death, but a place of possibility. A human had survived where 96 others had failed. And somewhere deep inside the metallic dragon, a spark of recognition had ignited. A human might not just survive, a human might win. And Valera, the dragon woman, could not look away. The first light of Krythos, twin moons glinted off the volcanic stones, painting the arena in silver and orange. The night had passed slowly, but Joran Hale had not rested. His muscles ached, his body trembled from exhaustion, yet his mind remained sharp. Oblivion crouched nearby, wings partially folded, its glowing red eyes following every movement he made. The metallic dragon had tested him throughout the night, and he had endured. Now a new challenge awaited. Valera's voice carried across the arena, amplified by the towers and echoing over the lava rivers. "Human," she said, her tone both sharp and curious, "the first night is always the easiest. You have learned to survive, but survival is not enough. The true test begins now." His voice carried the weight of calm determination. Valera raised a hand, and the ground beneath Oblivion began to shift. Massive spikes erupted from the stone floor, forming a moving labyrinth. Pools of molten lava rose along the edges, emitting waves of heat that shimmered across the arena. The 96 previous warriors had all failed here. None had understood how to move with the dragon and survive the shifting terrain. Many had panicked, their fear leading to mistakes, and Oblivion had ended them quickly. Joran studied the labyrinth carefully. He noticed patterns, the way the spikes moved, the timing of their rise and fall, the heat currents from the lava. He did not rush forward blindly. Instead, he waited, matching his breathing to the rhythm of the dragon and the arena. He had learned something crucial during the previous night. Oblivion was not only powerful, it was intelligent. It would test him, but it would not act without reason. The first attack came as expected. Oblivion lunged forward, its claws slicing through the air, aimed precisely at where Joran might step. The human rolled, letting the claws pass over him, and sprang to his feet on the other side of the labyrinth. He moved carefully, observing how the dragon adapted to his tactics. Each strike Oblivion made was precise, calculated, testing his reflexes and decision-making. Hours passed. Joran moved in sync with the dragon, learning to anticipate its strikes, to use the labyrinth to his advantage. He leapt over molten rivers, ducked under swinging metal spikes, and slid across stone bridges that trembled beneath his weight. Every movement was a test of agility, strength, and intelligence. And every time he survived. Valera watched from her platform, fascination in her glowing eyes. She had expected this human to fail quickly, to be crushed like the others. But he adapted, learned, and endured. "Perhaps humans are not so fragile," she murmured. "Perhaps they are clever than the galaxy believes." He began to move in patterns that mirrored the dragon's, almost like a dance. Each step, each motion was designed to communicate trust and understanding, not aggression. Oblivion hesitated with each movement, testing him, questioning him, yet refraining from full attack. Suddenly, the arena shifted. Massive stone walls rose from the floor, dividing the labyrinth into narrow passages. Fire erupted from vents along the walls, sending waves of heat and smoke across the arena. Joran's eyes narrowed as he calculated the timing. The previous warriors would have panicked, running blindly into traps or trying to attack the dragon with force. Joran's advantage was patience. He observed, waited, and then moved at the precise moment when the heat had subsided and the dragon's attention was momentarily elsewhere. Oblivion lunged again, faster this time. Joran rolled under its claws and sprang onto its back. The dragon hissed, thrashing violently, but he held on. His hands gripped the metal scales and edges of its armor. He could feel the vibrations through its body, the power in its wings, the energy humming through its metallic veins. The thrill of survival and the challenge of control surged through him, but he remained calm. Panic would get him killed. Understanding would keep him alive. Valera's eyes widened as she watched him cling to oblivion. "He is not only surviving, he is learning to move with it," she said quietly. "No human or alien has ever done this." The dragon slowed slightly, testing him further, almost as if it were curious. Hours became cycles of movement, observation, and adaptation. Joran's body ached, but his mind was sharper than ever. He learned how Oblivion's wings created shifts in the air, how its claws left vibrations in the stone, and how the heat from its body could signal its next attack. Every strike, every motion was a language, and he was learning it. The first cracks in the dragon's resistance appeared near dawn. Oblivion paused mid-strike, its red eyes following Joran closely. For a moment, the metallic beast seemed unsure, hesitant. Joran seized the opportunity. He moved closer carefully, slowly extending a hand as if to communicate. Oblivion tilted its head, a small hissing sound escaping its mouth. It did not strike. It did not lash out. It merely observed. Valera leaned forward on her platform, curiosity and admiration in her glowing eyes. "Incredible," she murmured. "He is not trying to dominate it. He is communicating. That is something no warrior before him has done." It was as though Oblivion had recognized the human's courage and intelligence, acknowledging him as different from the warriors who had come before. By midday, the arena had transformed into a gauntlet of fire, spikes, molten rivers, and shifting walls. Other warriors would have been overwhelmed, their fear and impatience sealing their fate. But Joran moved with precision, not letting panic cloud his judgment. He dodged, leapt, rolled, and climbed, each movement timed perfectly with the dragon's own rhythms. Valera watched silently, her respect growing. "Perhaps humans are the species to challenge oblivion," she whispered. "Perhaps they are the only ones who can survive it." The arena floor cracked open in places, lava bubbling from deep fissures. Fire erupted unpredictably from vents, forcing Joran to anticipate his path carefully. Oblivion moved around him, testing him, but no longer with full aggression. The dragon's curiosity was growing, and it was testing the limits of the human's endurance and intelligence. Joran's muscles screamed, sweat burned his eyes, but he pressed on. He leapt over molten streams, rolled under swinging spikes, and moved alongside Oblivion, slowly gaining its trust. Every moment was a test, and every test was passed with careful observation, patience, and courage. By the time the sun began to rise over Krythos, painting the arena in a golden light, Joran had survived where others had failed. Oblivion no longer attacked with lethal force. It followed him, circled him, and moved in ways that suggested recognition. The human had learned to communicate with a creature that no warrior had tamed in centuries. Valera stepped forward, her metallic hair glinting in the dawn light. "You are unlike any other warrior I have seen," she said softly. "You do not fight with strength alone. You fight with mind, with courage, with endurance. Perhaps you are worthy." He understood the dragon in a way no other warrior had. The challenge was far from over, but he had proven something crucial. Humans were not weak. Humans could endure, adapt, and succeed where others failed. Oblivion's glowing eyes met his, and for the first time a spark of understanding passed between them. A silent agreement formed in the arena. The metallic dragon had recognized the human's strength, not in weapons or force, but in courage, patience, and intelligence. The arena of Krythos, once a place of death and despair for 96 warriors, now held a different promise. A human had survived the night and the labyrinth. A human had begun to tame the untamable. And somewhere deep inside the metallic dragon, a spark of recognition had ignited. Joran sat on a stone ledge, breathing heavily, watching Oblivion. He knew the real challenge was only beginning. Valera would push him further. The dragon would test him more violently. But he had learned something invaluable. Understanding and patience were stronger than brute force. And the galaxy was about to see what humans could truly achieve. The morning sun of Krythos rose high over the volcanic arena, turning the molten rivers into rivers of gold and orange. The air shimmered with heat, and the jagged black stones reflected the light like mirrors. Today would be the true test. Joran Hale stood at the center of the arena, muscles sore, sweat still drying on his skin. He had survived the night and the shifting labyrinth, and he had earned a measure of trust from Oblivion. But he knew this next trial would push him beyond his limits. Valera's voice rang out across the arena. "Human," she said, her tone sharp and commanding, "you have survived through observation, through endurance, and through patience. Now you must prove yourself worthy of riding Oblivion." The final trial begins. This was no longer simply a test of survival. It was a test of intelligence, timing, and courage. Oblivion crouched at the far end of the arena, its wings spread wide, metallic plates glinting in the sun. Its red eyes focused on Joran like twin flames, measuring, calculating, waiting. The dragon's tail whipped from side to side, sending sparks across the stone, and its claws dug deep into the floor. Every movement was deliberate, precise, and deadly. Joran adjusted his stance, feeling the heat radiate from the arena beneath him. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. He knew he could not fight this challenge with force. The dragon was too powerful, too intelligent. He would have to move with it, not against it. The first step was the hardest. Joran moved cautiously across a narrow stone bridge, the molten rivers glowing dangerously on either side. Oblivion mirrored his movements, shifting its massive body to maintain eye contact. A sudden eruption of fire from a vent forced him to dive to the side, landing on his hands and knees. Sparks sizzled past him and the heat singed his hair. The dragon did not strike, it merely observed. Hours passed in a tense dance. Joran leapt from stone to stone, rolled under swinging metal spikes, and slid down molten slopes. He felt the rhythm of Oblivion's movements and adapted, anticipating its strikes and responding with careful precision. Each time the dragon lunged or twisted, Joran matched its motion, moving almost in unison. Valera watched silently from her platform, fascination and disbelief in her eyes. "No human or alien has ever endured this trial," she murmured. "He is not merely surviving, he is commanding, understanding, and anticipating." Massive stone walls rose from the molten rivers, dividing the space into tight corridors. Fire erupted from vents along the walls, forcing Joran to think quickly. He ducked under swinging spikes, leapt over molten rivers, and slid along narrow ledges. The dragon tested him relentlessly, its claws and tail striking with precision, yet never missing the opportunity to challenge him further. Joran realized something crucial. He could not simply react. He had to predict. He had to move before the dragon even decided on its next attack. His mind worked faster than his body, calculating paths, timing strikes, and reading the dragon's subtle cues. Every flick of a tail, every tilt of a head, every flex of a wing spoke a language only he could understand. By midday, the arena had become a chaotic labyrinth of fire, molten rivers, shifting stone, and moving spikes. The previous warriors had all failed here. They had relied on strength, technology, or telekinesis, but all had been overwhelmed by the complexity and unpredictability of Oblivion's intelligence. Joran relied on nothing but his mind, observation, and courage. Then the dragon tested him in a new way. Oblivion crouched low, wings folded, then leapt high into the air, landing on a narrow stone pillar with a force that shook the ground. The pillar cracked, threatening to collapse. Joran calculated quickly, leaping just as the pillar tilted, landing on the next platform with perfect balance. The dragon hissed, circling him, testing his agility and resolve. Hours of this trial passed, each more difficult than the last. Joran's body ached, his muscles screamed, but he remained focused. The humans had an edge the aliens could not predict, endurance combined with adaptability. Every challenge, every strike, every eruption of fire was met with calm determination and clever improvisation. Valera's respect grew with each passing moment. She had expected the human to fail quickly, as all others had, but he did not falter. He adapted. He survived. He learned. "Perhaps humans are the only species that can truly rise to this challenge," she murmured. The final stage of the trial approached. A massive chasm opened in the center of the arena, spanned by a narrow stone bridge barely wide enough for a human foot. Molten rivers churned below, and fire erupted unpredictably from vents on either side. Oblivion crouched at the far end, wings spread, tail whipping like a whip of steel. Its glowing red eyes fixed on Joran, challenging him, testing him, daring him to fail. Joran's heart pounded, but his mind was clear. He understood the rhythm now, the language of the dragon's movements, the pattern of the arena's hazards. He stepped onto the narrow bridge, feeling it tilt and shake beneath him. Sparks flew as molten rocks splashed from the rivers below. He moved slowly, deliberately, each step timed perfectly with Oblivion's shifting position. Halfway across, the dragon leapt. Joran rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding the claws, then sprang forward, landing lightly on the next stone. Oblivion circled him, testing his balance, his agility, his understanding. Joran held his ground, matching the dragon's movements, anticipating its strikes before they came. For hours, the final trial continued. Joran moved in perfect harmony with Oblivion, dodging fire, leaping over molten rivers, sliding under swinging spikes. The dragon tested him relentlessly, but he met every challenge with courage, patience, and intelligence. He was not merely surviving. He was learning, adapting, and mastering the rhythm of the beast. Valera's eyes glowed with admiration. She had witnessed countless warriors fail, all relying on brute strength or advanced technology. But Joran was different. He relied on intelligence, observation, and courage, the qualities that defined humans across the galaxy. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the arena, Joran reached the far end of the bridge. Oblivion crouched before him, wings spread wide, glowing red eyes fixed on him. The dragon hissed, a low, resonant sound that echoed across the arena. For the first time, it seemed to acknowledge him, recognizing his courage, intelligence, and adaptability. Joran stepped forward slowly, extending a hand in a gesture of trust. Oblivion tilted its head, then leaned slightly toward him. A spark of understanding passed between them, silent and powerful. The human had endured, adapted, and learned. He had survived where 96 warriors had failed. He had begun to tame the untamable. Valera stepped forward, her voice carrying across the arena. "You are unlike any warrior I have ever seen," she said. "You fight not with strength alone, but with mind, courage, and endurance. Perhaps you are worthy of riding Oblivion." Joran stepped closer, feeling the heat radiating from the dragon, sensing the power in its muscles, the energy in its veins. He reached out a hand, touching the metal scales gently. The dragon did not recoil. It did not strike. It accepted him, recognizing him as more than a warrior, a partner, a rider, a human capable of rising to the impossible. Valera watched in silence, awe and respect in her glowing eyes. "A human has done what none before could," she whispered. "The 96 failures, they were strong, clever, but this human, he understands. He is different. He is worthy." He felt the power of the massive creature beneath him, the heat, the strength, the intelligence. And yet he felt a connection, a bond formed through patience, courage, and understanding. For the first time in centuries, the impossible had been achieved. A human had not only survived Oblivion's deadly tests, but had begun to tame it. The arena, once a place of death for 96 warriors, now bore witness to a triumph that would be remembered across the galaxy. Joran looked up at Valera, exhaustion and triumph in his eyes. She smiled faintly, acknowledging his achievement. "You have done what no one else could," she said. "You are a true warrior, and a human worthy of legend." And somewhere deep inside the metallic dragon, a spark of recognition burned bright. A human had won. The arena of Krythos was quiet now, unlike the chaos it had held for so many cycles of the sun. The molten rivers flowed steadily, reflecting the fiery light of the twin moons as they rose in the sky. Joran Hale sat atop Oblivion, feeling the rhythm of the massive metallic dragon beneath him. The creature's wings flexed slowly, the hum of its hydraulics filling the air like a living heartbeat. After days of testing, of surviving, and of learning, Joran had finally earned what no human or alien had ever achieved, the trust of Oblivion. Valera stepped forward onto the black stone, her silver hair catching the moonlight. Her eyes glowed faintly with admiration. "You have done what 96 warriors could not," she said softly. "You have survived, learned, adapted, and tamed the untamable. You are a human, and that makes all the difference." He had faced one of the deadliest creatures in the galaxy, navigated shifting molten landscapes, and endured tests that had destroyed the best warriors from 100 worlds. And he had survived, not through brute force, but through intelligence, observation, courage, and patience, the qualities that made humans unpredictable and formidable. Oblivion lowered its massive head, allowing Joran to touch the metallic scales along its neck. The dragon's red eyes glowed softer now, no longer threatening, only curious and aware. It exhaled a hiss of heated air that swept across the arena, and Joran felt the power of the creature flow beneath him. This was not domination, it was partnership. A bond had formed, forged through respect, courage, and understanding. Valera approached closer, her armored boots clanging against the stone. "You understand, human," she said, her voice steady. That survival was never the goal was understanding. The galaxy respects power, but it fears understanding. You have mastered both. He had learned much during these trials, how to read strength, how to predict patterns, how to endure when everything seemed impossible. But the greatest lesson was this: courage and intelligence could surpass even the most impossible odds. From her platform, Valera's eyes scanned the arena, recalling the 96 warriors who had failed. Some had been powerful soldiers, masters of weapons and machines. Others had been cunning strategists, armed with psionic abilities or advanced technology. And all of them had fallen one after another because they had relied on what they thought was strength instead of understanding. Joran had survived where they had failed because he had seen Oblivion not as a machine, not as a weapon, but as a being. The audience, though mostly withdrawn by now, had not left entirely. A few ships hovered in orbit, sending live signals across nearby systems. The story of a human surviving Oblivion was already spreading, a legend in the making. Aliens whispered among themselves, questioning what they had believed about humanity. A human, so fragile and underestimated, had done what 96 warriors could not, and they had done it through courage, intelligence, and persistence. Valera's voice broke the silence again. You have proven yourself, Joran Hale. Now I offer you a choice. You may leave, return to your species, and carry the story of your triumph across the stars. Or, you may remain here, ride Oblivion, and become part of Crypto's legacy. Few humans are given such an honor. But he also saw the opportunity before him, the chance to ride a creature no one else had tamed, to form an alliance with one of the most powerful beings in existence, to prove that humans could rise above even the most impossible challenges. He looked down at Oblivion, feeling the hum of energy beneath him, the steady heartbeat of the metallic dragon. He extended a hand, gently resting it along the dragon's armored neck. The creature leaned slightly into his touch, accepting him fully. I stay, he said firmly, with Oblivion together. You are a rider, a partner, a human who has proven that ingenuity and courage surpass even the deadliest strength. Oblivion's tail swept to one side, then the other, signaling readiness. And then they moved. Slowly at first, gliding over the molten rivers, Oblivion's massive wings lifting them higher. Joran held on, feeling the strength and power beneath him, the intelligence in every movement. They rose over the arena, circling the volcanic mountains, the twin moons casting long shadows across the black stone. The audience watched in awe as the human rode the metallic dragon, a sight that would be remembered for generations. Aliens whispered, murmured, and some even cheered. A species they had underestimated, considered weak and fragile, had achieved the impossible. Humanity, through one courageous soldier, had risen to a level no one had anticipated. Valera remained on the platform for a moment, watching the pair soar. Perhaps the galaxy has underestimated humans for too long, she said quietly. They are clever, unpredictable, and resilient. They endure where others fail. Perhaps it is time the universe respects what they are truly capable of. He patted Oblivion's armored neck, and the dragon emitted a soft hiss, almost like a purr of approval. You are extraordinary, Valera said, stepping closer. Not just because you survived, but because you understood. Understanding is more powerful than brute force, and courage is more valuable than skill alone. The galaxy may yet see humans as they should, clever, resilient, and worthy of respect. That is how we survive in the galaxy. Humans never give up, and we never back down. The arena, once a place of death and despair, now felt like a sanctuary of achievement. The 96 warriors who had failed were remembered, but their failures only highlighted the brilliance of the human who had succeeded. Joran had endured every trial, faced every danger, and emerged victorious. And in doing so, he had shown the galaxy what humans were capable of. As the sun set behind the volcanic mountains, painting the sky with streaks of red and gold, Joran and Oblivion took flight once more. Valera followed on the platform, her eyes glowing with admiration and respect. The legend of the human who tamed the metallic dragon would spread across star systems, inspiring awe and respect wherever it was told. The human had proven that courage, intelligence, and perseverance could overcome even the most impossible odds. He had survived what 96 warriors could not. He had formed a bond with a creature of unimaginable power, and he had earned the respect of the dragon woman herself. For Joran Hale, the trials of Cryptos were over. But for humanity, the galaxy had just begun to see their true potential. Oblivion soared higher, wings stretching wide, casting a shadow over the lava rivers below. Joran held on, feeling the power of the dragon beneath him, the wind rushing past, the warmth of the molten world below, and the thrill of victory that came from endurance, intelligence, and courage. The universe was watching, and humanity had risen.